To begin, I would like to introduce our topic. Claudia and I chose to do our research on wind energy for this alternative energy project. This diagram over on the right side of the screen is depicting how a wind turbine works. Please follow along as we talk. Using the aerodynamic force from the wind acting upon the blades, the rotor, in the middle of the blades, spins. The rotor is connected to a generator which translates the aerodynamic force to electricity. This process is very similar to a pinwheel shown at the bottom left of the screen.
Now that we have discussed the process of creating energy using wind turbines, I'm going to mention a few benefits, including the cost. Wind power has an approximate cost of between 2 and 6 cents per kilowatt hour, depending on the area, while the revenue is about 7.2 cents per kilowatt hour. Some speculators think a wind turbine is too expensive to construct, and it does cost a few $1,000,000, but it can last for 20 or more years. The production of them is also beneficial because it has created so many jobs. By 2050, our source predicted that it would provide over 600,000 jobs in various forms. Wind power also allows our country's industry to grow, as it has the potential to have an economic impact of about $20 billion on the United States. The impact on other countries is also another factor to consider as a strength. This energy source is not a pollutant to our environment, like other sources may be. This is huge, as atmospheric emissions can cause many problems. A fun fact that people might not be aware of is that wind is a form of solar energy. It is due to the heating of the atmosphere. So, wind power is also sustainable. Finally, it is very simple to implement wind turbines on already existing land or farms. They only take up as much space as the area of the bottom of the turbine, and they provide the landowners with a much appreciated additional income.
Wind power is extremely efficient when it comes to carbon emissions, as it produces zero emissions when in use. It also saves billions of gallons of water, unlike thermal energy. Other types of power plants emit countless forms of smog and air pollutants that can trigger asthma attacks and lung disease. However, wind energy doesn't do any of that, as it just relies on the environment to power itself. Overall, it is efficient and environmentally friendly.
On the other hand, a con includes the unfortunate occurrence of many birds and bats being killed. Based on our source, improvements have been made on turbines to reduce this from happening. Subsequently, more birds and bats have been killed because of power lines, communication towers, and large buildings than because of wind turbines. This statement is something to ponder over. In order to understand how the public has weighed the pros and cons of wind turbines, Anna and I chose to send out a survey to my mother's Facebook friends of all ages. The results were heavily on the side of, I think it's a good idea, although there was the occasional very negative and harsh feedback. Others said they feel that there are other options they think would work better, or they chose the statement declaring that they do not have any thoughts on wind turbines. These statistics are based on about 40 respondents, and their thoughts were very interesting to analyze.
Reliability of wind power is dependent on the region where it is being used. The areas with the most wind power are often far away from major cities, and rerouting the electricity grid simply to use wind power is not economically feasible. Because wind is inconsistent by nature, on average, wind power only produces 30 to 40% of its potential energy. Because of modern meteorology technology, we can predict changes in wind output up to 48 hours in advance, which gives the power companies ample time to adjust. However, this still affects the energy production overall and can cause the power companies to lose money.
Wind energy has been around for many years. For this reason, there have been many uses for it. To show this transition, I have noted a few brief examples before diving in to more statistics. In the past, wind power was used for actions such as pumping water and grinding grain. Obviously, we have other more efficient means of doing these things. Consequently, we are now using wind energy more to generate electricity. Alright, so the most current number of wind turbines in the world that we could find was 341,000. This is a big number, but it has most likely drastically increased since then. We will see the distribution of this number of turbines in the world on the next slide. This map shows the top 10 countries that use wind energy. It may seem like wind turbines are mostly concentrated in Europe, but China is actually the country with the most, which is a little odd after thinking about all of the established areas there. The second country is the United States, and then Germany, followed by India, Spain, the United Kingdom, France, Brazil, Canada, and finally Italy. Another point to discuss on this slide is, why do some countries not use alternative energy sources like wind energy? This may be due to its cost, lack of economic expansion, and location conflicts. With new innovations of wind turbines, hopefully these factors will change to a more positive stance so that more countries can enjoy the benefits of wind power.
Some other places wind energy could be used. How this form of energy could be used in the city of Omaha and Omaha households. Omaha is one of the largest cities in Nebraska, a state which already houses many wind turbines. Because of wind energy's reduction of carbon emissions, preservation of water resources, and minimal effect on the environment, it is a strong fit for Omaha. A quote by the American Wind Energy Association says, quote, "Wind energy deployment increases community revenues. Local communities will be able to collect additional tax revenue from land lease payments and property taxes, reaching $3.2 billion annually by 2050." End quote. In Nebraska, wind energy provided 14.1% of all in-state electricity production. The number of homes powered by wind in 2018 was 497,900. Omaha is doing an amazing job using wind energy, but there is still obvious room for improvement. It is difficult, however, because wind turbines need a steady flow of heavy wind to produce the maximum amount of energy possible. Omaha, although extremely windy, is inconsistent and difficult to predict. To change the energy percentage provided by wind to 100%, we would have to invest in multiple more turbines outside the city and reroute the electricity grids, which, as mentioned a few slides previously, is often not economically feasible. We aren't saying that wind energy completely powering Omaha is economically impossible, but we did want to mention that it will be difficult to get funding. Rerouting power lines is expensive enough, but the turbines alone are also extremely expensive, but we'll get into that more on the next slide. First, I'd like to bring your attention to the quote at the bottom left of the screen. Quote, "The short answer is that a typical wind turbine, of the type shown, will have an energy payback of less than 6 months and a carbon dioxide payback of around 6 months." End quote. A typical wind turbine costs around $3 to $4 million, but according to a very well-researched man on Quora named Alexander Somm, who has a degree in green architecture, the wind turbine would pay itself off in around 6 months. However, this number was calculated as if the wind turbine produced the full percentage of its abilities for the full 6 months. Obviously, as stated before, wind turbines don't tend to do this. They only produce around 30 to 40% of their energy abilities. But based on these calculations, the turbine should pay itself off fairly quickly, in around 6 years or so, even at the lowest percentage of average energy production. However, please take these numbers with a grain of salt, as it is not peer-reviewed, but this was the only source we could find that had actual math to back it up. I, Anna Methy, did check his math, and from what I could understand, it seemed very legit, and he cited all of the sources and listed all of his calculations. So Claudia and I agreed that he is credible. Now, according to our previously referenced survey, the majority of those we asked think that using a wind turbine at Marion is awesome. Placing the turbine could be a little tricky, but depending on the size we choose, it could be done. Ideally, the wind turbine would not be placed under a hill, such as in the soft lot parking lot, but it would be next to a large building, such as the school or the convent. Because each turbine churns out massive amounts of energy, we would only need one.
As Anna mentioned, we did ask in our survey about what the respondents' thoughts are on using a wind turbine at Marion High School. Once again, the majority of them stated they think it is a great idea. Others said they do not think it would be feasible for Marion to adopt, while a smaller portion feel that other options would work more efficiently.
Here is our works cited. Thank you for listening to our presentation.